Cuckoo! We're Isabel and Kim, girlfriends living in France and chatting about everything going on in our lives. Come hang out with us while we cheers with an Aperol Spritz, swap stories, and get into some deep talks and share what we've learned along the way. Follow us on Instagram at cuckoo.pod. Hi, Kim.
Hi, Isabel. Good to see you.
It's good to see you, too. It's been, so we are just coming off of the French school holiday, and I was away for work the week before, and you had guests, so we haven't really seen each other in like a month.
I know.
What's new?
Well, we have also had a lot of busy activities. I feel really lucky. We were actually able to go to Italy with my parents. It was so nice.
That's so
and then
nice.
we had guests, which was good, but you know, it's always like a lot to recover from and then get back into like the work swing of things. So, yes, it is very different from the US where our breaks were so short, and we'd usually try to have like a rest day on each end because it was easier for the kids. And here there's breaks, like it feels like pretty often every 2 weeks that they get off school. And so that has been an adjustment. And at first I was like, this is amazing, like 2 weeks off. And I mean, they do go to school longer. So maybe Isabel, can you explain, you know better the
to be honest,
cycle.
like I'm not even sure if it really even works out that way. But
Okay.
So the French school system, they have off July and August. And then during the school year, it works out to roughly every 6 weeks, there's a 2-week holiday. So this accumulates to another 2 months off during the school year. And then there's also a lot of bank holidays. So where we're located in France, our next vacation is actually 3 weeks long.
Yes.
So that will have meant that we've had 2 weeks in October, 2 weeks at Christmas, 2 weeks in February, and then 3 weeks end of April into May.
Yes.
And this is my official petition to France to change the school vacations to 1 week, because I don't know about you, but I am spinning out. And I actually posted about this on Instagram, and so many French moms messaged me being like, it's impossible. We cannot keep up with all these breaks because it makes it really hard. I see if it's 1 week, you know, you can justify taking the time off. But I think that most people are working in France, and especially in our situation where we don't have family living close
Right.
by, a lot of French kids will go to their grandparents' house for a week. They'll do a camp. But I'm struggling with all of these breaks. And I actually think it's hard for the kids too, because 2 weeks is a lot of time to be out of school and then to get like kind of back in the swing of things. Do you find that with your kids too?
My kids on Monday, this past Monday, were both crying in the car, and they love school, but it was like, what do you mean we can't like sleep in and just have time with you? And I was like, sorry, you have to go back to school. And you know, the school also, like, I think in general in France, the schools are much more academic, I've noticed, than the United States. So it's not like there's sort of an easing in like play, especially like my son is in the equivalent of first grade in the United States, and they're working like 8 hours straight, like on, you know, very much, I would say, like topics that are more covered in like second or third grade. Like he's already learning multiplication,
like,
et
even
cetera.
like our daughters are in the same grade, and they're like working on reading stuff. And they're in the equivalent of pre-K.
Yeah.
Which is like, I mean, maybe things have changed in the U.S. But I know for a fact I did not learn to read until first grade.
Right, and they're
least.
4 and 5 years old.
Yeah.
So
and
it's definitely an adjustment for them to get back into it. And like homework has also been, you know, more of like a, what do you mean I also don't get to come home and play? Like you have to do your homework now. And so, yes, I think the school, I think if you just moved to France at first, like for me, it was like, this is amazing. Like this is what like the culture should be. Like families are spending more time with their kids, and the ability, especially if you've moved from the US, like you have all these like travel plans, but then you realize like this is actually a lot of work and a lot of money. So you end up kind of like trying to figure out like, well, we want to see this stuff, but it's also expensive, but we also need to like juggle this with like the work we're doing here. So I hear you on it being like, it's not
even
it's
like
not
2 weeks at Christmas. Cool. That sounds great. But these other breaks in between, I mean, it's killing me. And I think it's when you work in France, I've actually never worked for a corporate French company, but you do get a decent number of vacation days. But most people save a big chunk of that to take in August because most of the country kind of closes down. Everyone takes their family holidays, which is so amazing.
Yeah,
and I
totally.
think like it really, like everyone needs that kind of like pause in the year to reset and get ready to go back to another school year. But a lot of, from what I've seen and what I've heard, is a lot of French parents will maybe take 1 week of the 2 weeks, and then they have help or send their kids to a camp the second week.
Yep.
But they're like still getting paid for those things. And when you
Right.
work for yourself,
Yes, like we do.
You're only getting paid if you're having time to work.
Right.
And me and my husband both work for ourselves.
Yeah.
And so it can just feel like this. We don't have family living
Yeah,
nearby,
same.
and it's this crazy juggling match. And I end the breaks feeling like my head is like
Drained.
going in a million different directions because I've been trying to manage
All of it.
multitask.
Yes,
That's the word I'm
multitask.
looking at. Multitask too many things at once,
Yeah.
and then it's like we're just whirling around, and
Yeah,
like I
hear
want to
you.
be present and enjoying, but I have all these thoughts building up in my
Of
head.
course. And then you're sort of just like delaying, like getting back into
Yes.
like the routine and swing of things. So,
And then
so
school
that's-
starts, and you're so tired that first week is like a wash, anyways, because you're confused. Sorry. I cut you off.
Yes. No, I agree. So I'm kind of like, I'm not as far on the spectrum yet of like, I don't want 2 week breaks because I think I'm still coming off of like the US felt really short for the amount of
Yeah.
vacation time in general. Like I've worked for a lot of corporations and so has my husband, and they're just never like you get these maybe 14 days of vacation and it just never
That's just
felt
not
like
enough.
a lot. And
Yeah.
it's really hard when the school vacations weren't like aligned and et cetera. So I'm not totally there. I still sort of enjoy, especially now that like
Mm-hmm.
we have a little more freedom, but I understand like I think longer term this would be very challenging.
I think it's hard. But the other thing that, because I didn't really realize this until a year ago, my daughter started maternelle, which is when you're at 3 years old, children the year they turn 3, they have to be enrolled in full-time school. But the same vacation break doesn't apply for the daycare system. So the daycare system closes for 3 weeks in August, and then they close for 1 week at Christmas, but they're open the rest of the year.
Wow, I
So
didn't realize that.
and I did notice that a lot of kids wouldn't be there. They would always ask, like, will your children be here during the school holiday? And I was like, yeah, of course she'll be. Of course she'll be here. But so this has also been a new adjustment,
Yes.
like now having kids at school.
Oh, right.
Having to kind of figure out all of these holiday times.
Yes.
But
Well, I guess
Learning-
we're
work in
learning as we go.
progress,
So that kind of dives us into our topic of the day today, which is kind of a deeper topic, but something I think that's been on both of our minds.
Totally.
Which is kind of this concept of what's home.
Yes.
And home, I think means so many different things to different people. And I got to thinking about this a lot because, my parents were here, and I think there's like such a comfort and a familiarity with parents. And then we had good friends and family, like a cousin and their family stay with us. And it was like you suddenly have this like sense of relationships and people you're really close to. But then I was like alone kind of coming back, and I'm like looking at the French countryside, and I'm trying to sort of piece together, like, I'm like, is this my home? Like, is living in France my home now? And, we're renting a house here. This is actually the rental home that we're sitting in right now. But it's, and so on my mind is like, what does home really mean? And is it really just like the physical place? And I think Isabel and I are kind of both going through like defining this a little bit for ourselves,
Yeah.
especially as we both have children and like, we're sort of not in like our where we grew up. So I'm
just
curious
so
to hear
far,
your,
like so different from what
Yeah.
we grew. I mean, for me, I lived in the same town. I was born on Nantucket, but we moved to the Boston area when I was 2. So I don't remember moving there, but I grew up in the same town pretty much my whole life. And home to me was like, we got on the yellow school bus, and
Yep.
it was very like, we were always like, we moved a few times to different houses, but it was always felt very finished.
Mm-hmm.
And I sort of feel ever since I've moved, I'm kind of just like moving,
Yeah.
cruising around. And then there's kind of that deeper aspect of like never truly feeling at home in France. But now that I'm coming up on 6 years.
Yeah.
When I go back to the US, I've been gone for so long that
Right.
I don't truly feel at home there either. And for me,
So
it's kind of been
interesting.
this weird thing in my head where it's like, will I ever feel home somewhere?
Totally.
And granted, like I've just moved from Paris to here, and I do think that probably in like 10 years, 15 years, maybe this would feel more of like the
Yeah.
traditional home that I grew up with, but it does it gets in your head a little
For
bit.
sure. I mean, I similar upbringing to you. Like, I grew up in a suburb of Milwaukee. We moved maybe twice. I had the same friends at the same school from like kindergarten through 8th grade, and then a lot of them ended up going on to like similar high school. And in my head, like when I was younger, before I like met my husband, and I was like, oh, we're going to buy a house somewhere, like, and we're just going to settle there. And that's like the forever home. And then as I got through my like, I was like, do I really want that? Like, you kind of have to ask yourself, like,
Yeah, I
is
had
that
the
like the
same
life
thing.
you want?
Yep.
Right. And I think you suddenly realize, like, while that provides like comfort and stability, in my mind, it felt really like stagnant and boring and limiting. And I don't know that obviously everyone's different. And
Yeah.
for some people that's like perfect and they're really happy doing that. But for me, there was always this like sort of aching need to like go out and move and see something and do something and be exposed to like a lot of different things. And I think what results from that is like, I moved right after college. Like, I moved to Boston and then after that I lived in New York, and then we moved to San Francisco, and now we live in France. And we've actually never owned any of the homes that we've lived in. And so while everything's been a rental home and we've had children along the way, you kind of go through this all of a sudden moment. I think especially it's been sort of more triggering abroad of like, is this home now? Like, because we've decided to stay for, you know, at least another year, who knows? And so that to me is like, got me thinking, like, is really home really more about like the people? And, but then it's sort of this concept of like, okay, it's where your immediate family is, like you and your husband and maybe your children, but like, is that enough? Like, is that right for our children? Like, and so I've just been sort of going through this questioning process, I would say.
Yeah, and I think it's hard because like your immediate family, which one would always argue is like the most important, but like the rest of your family, especially when you first move, like you really do realize that they live somewhere else. Yeah. And so there's that big separation.
Totally.
Too. And I also think as I think many of the people who kind of grew up in our age, like we've moved around a lot. Yes. Like you went away for college, you moved to a city afterwards, and then maybe you moved somewhere else. So I feel like there was a lot more moving around than maybe previous generations did. And so I think that also like there isn't really like, even now my parents have moved to another place. So when I think of like going home, I'm not going home. I haven't been back to my childhood home.
No,
town.
Same with mine.
Like, but I'm going back to like my parents' house now. And, but it is very interesting how that kind of changes.
Yeah. And I'm wondering, like, I mean, you've been here 6 years. I've only been here like 7 months now. And I think when you're not in your like home culture, that to me was like the first moment, I think, not first moment, there's been multiple moments, but I think a moment this weekend that kind of like, it also hit me and again, we've been like with family and traveling, and I went to so there's a lot of birthday parties here in France, and they tend to be at like, they're basically indoor playgrounds for
like soft
children.
Play, usually.
Yes. Yeah. And like as your child gets older, you can kind of drop them off there, but we have like still younger, like 4 and 5 year olds.
Who I think like even a lot of parents still will just drop them off.
Right.
Like, I think it's pretty normal to drop like a 4-year-old off for 3 hours. And but
which does not make me feel comfortable.
Yeah.
But some people, and my daughter also, I mean,
I've
like,
actually done it once before because the place they went to, they were like taken away.
Like
into like a place, and like you couldn't stay and see them. So I was like, okay, we'll just leave. But it's definitely different.
It's definitely different.
Leave with strangers, you know?
Yes.
I don't know.
But I would say these centers are also like not very parent friendly. Like I think in the United States, there's like, maybe there's like a bar or something fun. Like the parents can kind of socialize, but this is like, it's very much of like, you're at an indoor playground and the parents kind of sit down with like, you know, a cafe and you're chatting. But this girl in my daughter's class was French, and the only moms that were there were also French speaking. And I realized like my French isn't quite good enough to like sit down at a table and like hold, the birthday parties are 3 hours, like a 3-hour long conversation. And it was like, I felt like a real outsider, like and not like this is the first time, but it was like this big sort of realization that like, this is not really my home. Like these people, this is their home and they're very comfortable. But like, I felt really just like on the fringe and kind of unsure. How to really behave at the party, who to talk to, like, do I go on my phone? 'Cause I'm not really part of the conversation. And so it just made me realize like, okay, that concept of home, like culturally is like, sometimes maybe you're just craving your own culture a little bit, or people that even speak your own language, or just I think we're used
just
to
like the
smiling
comfort.
a lot in the
Like
US.
there's something very comfortable about going back to the US and knowing all the social codes
Right.
and seamlessly being able to integrate into pretty much any situation.
Yes.
Do you know what I mean?
Yes.
And whereas here in France, like even me, I've been here a long time and I still struggle with these types of social situations because while I speak French, I think I have like a pretty good level of French. I understand most things. I just still don't have the level. I don't speak with my personality that I have in English. And so I always feel like I'm not myself in these situations. And it is very, it's hard because, you know, we've had a lot of life experience so far. I guess that's a nicer way of saying we're older. But there's been like few times where like in the US, I would find myself in this kind of situation where you feel like the outsider, you're being more on like the reserved, timid side because you don't want to do a misstep and you're very, I think
you have your guard up more.
You have your guard up and I feel like I get in my head a lot.
Oh, same.
I think normally I just like say what I want to say and I don't think too much.
Right.
But there's something about being in that particular situation that makes me feel very self-conscious.
Yeah. No, same. And I also, you know, this is a reputation that is true or not true, but like the French aren't exactly as welcoming as I would say maybe some other cultures are in terms of like definitely there's very little chance of like a French mom approaching you at this birthday party and saying, come sit down with us, even if it were in French. And I would understand her saying that. It's very much of like,
and not to say like that doesn't happen because I have met some people and usually it's French people who have lived abroad and they know it's like they see you and they're like, oh my gosh, I have been in that situation when I moved to Texas or when I lived in California. And those are like, to me, those are the French women that I've always connected the most with are the ones who have lived abroad because we have this kind of shared experience of having lived somewhere that you wouldn't think is so different because I think I mean, I never thought that France and the U.S. were so different, but they're wildly different.
Oh, you see? Okay,
I think they're I just think that the cultures are so different, and I didn't think that it would be as different as it is.
Interesting. I think in my head when we were moving here that it was going to be incredibly drastically different.
You did?
Yes.
See, I'm just naive in that sense. Like I was like, how different could it be? Like,
okay, I went in thinking this is a big change. Like this is a very different culture. These are like really like the people are definitely have a different mindset than the US. And so I mentally sort of knew that this would be different and challenging. And actually I've sort of found it to be less different, like in some ways.
To what you had made up in your
head. To what I made
up
in my head. Yes. And because I think I had a lot of fear of like just, I mean, the thought of giving up like everything, moving, you know, to a country I've maybe been once, like just didn't, it just
when you put it like that, it seems
crazy. It seems crazy. And I think then I sort of formulated this like, oh, this is going to be really different. It's going to be really hard. I've just got to like brace myself. And I think, I mean, granted, I have French friends who have moved abroad. They're kind of, and they speak like decent enough English that we can have a friendship. I would say those are like my only French encounters. I haven't yet like made a French friend who's like native to France and only speaks French.
But of course, I mean, like, and you probably won't get to that point for another year or so because, you know, it just takes there's a lot of like basis that you have to learn in French to be able to have the conversation. And I still struggle with that. And the other thing I think that people don't always realize is I don't think, maybe I'm wrong, but I don't think it's that French people don't want to like welcome us with open arms. I think that they're reserved on two senses. One, they don't want to invest time in a relationship if they think that you're going to leave soon.
Right.
And two, I think I would say that most French people have a really decent level of English just because of all the movies they've watched. Like there's just a lot of English exposure. But they're really self-conscious when it comes to speaking in English to an American or to someone who speaks to an English speaker. And I completely relate to this because sometimes if I'm really tired, I even have to force myself to call a restaurant and make a reservation 100%. Because I'm like,
I dread it.
I don't feel like having this conversation and these birthday parties, that type of stuff. I have to like work if I'm feeling good, like no worries, like I can go like handle it. If we have guests that are staying with us for a weekend, usually I'm okay. But I do have to kind of like pump myself up in my head, like, okay, you can do this. Right. And I still have in my head, every time I say something, I'm like, did that make
Did that
sense?
come out right?
Like, am
I know,
because
same.
I'm like, what does this sound like in English? Like,
Right.
what would this sound like to me?
Totally.
And I think that can also kind of cause this little distance.
Yeah. You know, it's interesting though, what you were saying is I find like that even though the French like are more like they're less likely to speak English. And I think you're right. A lot of it is self-conscious about like their English. I've found that their English actually is like
It's so
way
good.
better than my French. And I'm the one stumbling
Same.
through the French and they actually, their English is great. But
Their English is always
but
so
for
good. I
some
always say
reason,
this to
there's-
French people. They're like, oh,
Yeah.
no, it's horrible. I'm like, you speak, in my opinion, you are so much more fluent
I'm
in
like,
English
oh
than
my
I am
gosh,
in
we
French.
could have a full, like your
Yeah.
English is amazing, but they're always apologizing. Like my English is so bad. And I'm like, really? Cause like, my French is way worse than your English. And
Yeah.
so I think that's just like maybe a cultural, where like Americans are just like, okay, we're just going to try to speak whatever language.
And we'll very
or maybe they don't
confidently
try
say
or-
like, oh, I speak some French. I
Right.
promise you, I told my now husband, like, oh yeah, like I speak French because I had taken French class in high school, but I just I knew nothing. I don't
No.
even know how I had the nerve to say that I spoke French. It was crazy. And he was like, what, like, you don't speak French. He's like, being able to say bonjour and ça va is not speaking
No,
French.
no.
And how to conjugate être. Like, that's not being fluent in a language. Like,
No.
just so you know. And I was like, wow. Yeah, you're right. Like,
No, it is crazy. And I think if any of you that are listening have like studied abroad, it's also like sort of that jarring experience. Like I learned Spanish my whole life. And then I lived in Spain during college with a family that only spoke Spanish. And I thought, oh, I'll
It
be
must
fine.
be
I was like, no problem. Like I've taken Spanish now for what? I mean, I don't even know how many years, but a long time. And I got there and between like it was southern Spain, so the accent is very different than we learn more like North American Spanish than
Yeah.
like Spain Spanish. So like the accent's different, the words are different. It's a lot faster than we've ever learned. And I was in like wow, I really don't speak Spanish. Like,
Yeah.
when I first got there for a long time.
Whereas I'm sure you arrived being like, oh,
yeah, it's like I got this.
speak
Like
Spanish.
right. So I think we have sort of a confidence as Americans of like,
Yeah.
yeah, we've got this. Like, and it's the French just are more reserved in that respect of like, even though they have it probably more than we do, they're not gonna sort of openly say like, I'll just start speaking in English to you. So
Yeah.
yes. So kind of that's bringing us to like, I think the language piece is another piece that like just makes it feel like, is that home? Can you ever feel at home in a country that's not yours? Was like a
Yeah.
question that I was also pondering.
I think it's a really good question.
Yeah. And I think that to me, like over time you can. And
I think so,
I think
too.
you can. And I really believe that like, I think the longer you live somewhere, the more you feel like, and I think you have to put yourself out there. Like you have to try with the language. You have to learn about the culture. Like I think you'd be naive to say like, oh, I'll feel like this is my native culture if you like don't try with the language, don't try to understand like the
And
cultural
only have friends
differences,
that are
and only
expats.
have friends who are expats. Like
Yeah.
it's not probably going to be the
And it's also just, and it does happen to a lot of people. And I understand how it happens because there's definitely been moments where I have felt like, especially with COVID and having
Yeah.
a baby, like there was a point in my life where I was having very few French social interactions, just kind of
course.
because how things
Right.
evolved. But I can see, because at the beginning I was always like, when I would first meet people and they were like, oh, I've been in France for 8 years, but like I don't speak French. And I was like,
what? Yeah.
like, how does this happen?
Yeah.
And I do see how it can happen, especially if you're not working in French every day, or like I see how people end up in these situations where they live somewhere.
You do? Because I'm always
Yes.
so confused. I'm like, how have you been here this long?
Because I think that there's enough people that speak English that people are able to get away with it. But I think it is
Interesting.
such a shame because I think until you can speak French and understand French, you'll never ever understand like the true France. Does that make sense?
100%. And I also think what I miss, like, okay, so if you are in the United States or like your native country where you're speaking your native language, there's like a little like joking around you can do at a store, like, because you
Yeah.
get each other's like humor and you're fluent enough to be able to just like, or to just have like a side conversation with someone like over coffee. Like, I can't do that right now. And it's like those little moments in your day, I realize like are actually, and there's been like scientific proof that these add to like happiness over time.
I
when you can like
completely agree with
have
this.
just like a small interaction with someone you don't know, or you share like just like a little joke about something.
You know, like
and-
we all get so busy, like people don't have time. It's not like in your 20s when you have
Right.
all this like time to hang out with friends and get the
Totally.
like fill up your social tank.
Right.
But now, like honestly, there were so many times where like a small like smile or
Yeah.
just like a little thing in like a day when you
Right.
have a newborn and you're so tired,
Totally.
like makes your whole
Yes,
day.
like
Do
the
you know what
little
I mean? It sounds
banter
so
with like
silly,
a new
just like,
mom in Paris,
Yeah.
But if you don't have the language skills to be able to do
You miss
that,
out. You
you're
don't have the
completely missing out.
opportunity.
And that's what I miss
Yeah.
because I don't have that like next level deeper where I can.
Yeah,
Like,
but you'll get there. You guys don't know this, but Kim has really gone like full throttle with the French. I've never seen anyone like take it so seriously.
I mean, I think it's important to me. Like, I don't think I would have felt comfortable. Like, once my husband and I decided like we were going to live in France, we both, even though we were working both full time, we had 2 young children, like they were 2 and 4 at the time. We made a commitment to take online French classes at night from like 8 o'clock till 10 at night,
Oh my
2 nights a
gosh.
week, just to have like a baseline when we
Yeah.
got here because we felt like it was that important.
Yeah.
Because it just felt even more uncomfortable, I would say, to like move somewhere where, and I'm like a fear-based person. Like I was like, what if I can't talk to a doctor and our kids are sick, or
Yeah.
like all the fears of like, I think I might have done mine more out of fear, and my husband probably did it more out of like let's be part of the culture.
Yeah.
And so forever, whatever the reasons are, it's only like been reinforced living here that I think you have to, I
Yeah.
believe like you really have to learn and try, and you're going to make mistakes and it's okay. But that's how like, I think something feels more comfortable and feels more like home. And it
Yes.
does, I don't know. One other quick thing, I was saying we were in Italy and I don't know any Italian. Like, I'll just be honest, like, but I was able to like pick up a few things, and we listened in the car ride. We drove actually and listened to like, all the Italian words, like you can repeat on the app. But it was interesting because I realized like I was more uncomfortable that I didn't know any Italian, and we were there for like almost 2 weeks. And I felt comforted coming back to France and at least being able to talk and understand
it starts to
some of
change.
French. And I was like, okay, this feels a little more
Yeah.
like quote
baby
unquote
steps.
home to me than
Yeah.
Italy, because at least I could understand what people in the train sitting next to me were at least somewhat talking about, or I could order something at a restaurant without feeling really uncomfortable. So I do think it does make a difference.
I think so too. So I guess like this sort of leads us back to then like what is figuring out home in a different context
Yeah.
than what you grew up with.
Yeah.
And I don't know. I think for me, I'm still very much figuring it out.
Same.
But I will say that the things that are so much less important to me, like right now we're in a rental house. We have to move
Yeah.
again soon. We're looking for a new place. It's been a little bit challenging finding something. We have the Olympics coming up this
Right.
year. So I think a lot of people are wanting to rent their houses out. The other thing in this region, people come here in the summer for
Yes,
vacation. So
huge.
there's a lot of houses that aren't available. You can rent them September to June, but then they're rented out all summer. And so it's already a challenging place to find a place. And so right now we're in a furnished house. And when we move, I've never lived in have you ever moved into a
No,
furnished
this is our
apartment?
first time I've moved into a furnished
And
place.
I sort of had I realized I had like a little bit of a thing about it in my
me
head
too.
because I've always lived with my own bed and
Yeah,
our own
same.
stuff. And we left all of our furniture in Paris because our apartment there is an Airbnb now. And now almost a year into living there, like I've just kind of realized like there's so many things that I think I've like built up in my head as being like how it's supposed to be because of the way I grew up. Like my parents still have the same furniture that I grew up with. And
Yeah.
I don't know, there was like this weird connection with the furniture, but I'm sort of just like, doesn't really like nothing in our life has changed because we haven't like designed it to our taste. Like would I
Right.
prefer to be in my own place and feel really comfortable? Yes, like
Yeah.
that sounds good, but is it something that I like need to survive the day? And what I've realized is just like no. And
Totally.
I've also realized that I just don't need that much stuff.
No,
Like even when it
100%.
comes to clothes, like I think that really like for my life right now, like my definition of home is really just like where my husband is
Yeah.
and where my daughter is.
Yeah.
And like that's kind of it. And we're like trying to build like a secure like foundation for
Totally.
her. And I really hope that we end up staying here. And
Yeah.
I think that she'll have all of that, but just kind of like being okay with like not having the final vision of what I want like right away.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
And I think we're used to in this day and age too, like you see something you want
Yeah.
it like right away.
And you work hard enough to just like get it, and that's like your goal, and like
Yeah.
you have to have that like defined.
But then sometimes you get it and it's like, is
like,
that really what
I
you wanted?
wanted?
And so
Right.
I'm just kind of like freestyling a little like, yeah, we don't know where we're going in July. Like we'll figure it out. And I do think I think it can feel uncomfortable, but at the same time, like I just think that all good things come out of discomfort.
I agree.
And I think it's really hard to like grow and develop
Yes.
and kind of push your limits
Yes.
in life if you don't ever have that like check of like feeling uncomfortable and like,
Yep.
okay, how do I make myself feel more comfortable?
100%.
Because that's, at least for me, like that's really how I think I've changed a lot since like I was younger and
For
in my
sure.
20s, and even in the past, like just since becoming a mom, I feel
Yeah.
like so much has changed, and it's really kind of been based off of that. So for me,
Yeah.
like home is a little more of like a loose definition than I
Yeah.
thought it would be, but it really just comes down to like the people
For sure.
in my immediate family.
Yeah.
And not that like I don't care about my other family.
No,
but,
of course,
You
of
know,
course.
when you're not living
Right.
physically close to them, it really does focus down into like your immediate pack.
Yeah. It's so interesting. I think this is one of the things you and I bonded over too, of like, I've been working on like being comfortable with uncertainty, because I think for me, my quick story, like we moved from San Francisco to Marin County, which is like, I called it like the sunny haven. It's like 15 minutes over the Golden Gate Bridge, and it's like you're suddenly living in the sun, and it's like nice, and you can get like a house with a little yard. And to me, this felt like, this is what I want. Like I want this, I want like this. And I loved the house we were renting, and I like bought all this furniture that like fit perfectly in the house. And we'd only been living there about a year when we decided to move to France. And my husband and I talked about it, and he's like, it makes no sense to store all this furniture. It's really expensive. I know you're happy with it, but I realized that like I had this major emotional connection as
the
like
furniture.
the furniture being like part of the stability and comfort and the home that I thought in my mind I'd always
crazy.
wanted. And so I basically did a fire sale on, for those of you familiar, on Nextdoor, and just posted that like we're moving. And I was like, I've got Serena and Lily. I've got like all these like awesome, I thought like my furniture I like loved. And I am not joking. I would like have these people, strangers, walk through my home. Like I had price tags like on everything. And then I'd see them like pull up a truck and walk out with like stuff. I was felt like
You felt really
this was
emotionally
my thing.
attached to it.
So emotionally attached.
Yeah.
And I was like literally crying at the window watching stuff go away. And my husband was looking at me like, Kim, it's just stuff. But to
Yeah.
me, there was like deeper
There was meaning.
things.
It's like, I think it's also goes back to being a woman in a sense
Yeah,
that like,
maybe.
at least like for me, like I have this like I've had it since I was a kid. Like
Yeah.
I've always been like caregiver, nurturing, and wanting to like make
Yes,
this
yes. Like, this is
like
the-
almost like nesting, you know? But
right.
I've really always felt that inside of me. I have like very strong urges to
Totally.
make things nice
I have
and
the
like to
same.
have like a comfortable
Yes,
bed, and like
yes.
I want things to be a certain way. And so because I realized like I have this weird
Oh my gosh,
thing with the
totally.
furniture too.
Yes. And even like this was even my children, we had this, it was like a Pottery Barn, like a rocking chair that I literally remembered like breastfeeding both my kids and sitting in there for hours, like and my kids are not babies. We never use this rocking chair anymore.
Yeah.
It sat in a corner. And for some reason, getting rid of that
Yeah,
was
but
like
it's
one of
tied to
the
the-
worst. And it's not even in good shape. It was nothing like special. It was just a memory.
But you know what? It's not even just us, because we had like this little, my daughter's room in Paris was small and we couldn't fit like the crib and the changing table and like
Oh,
a
yeah.
big recliner. So we had this like little kind of like small rocking chair, and it was really uncomfortable,
Yeah,
and it was
totally.
really ugly, but it did the job. And when we moved, I didn't have the attachment to it because I just like, it was never, I didn't
Right.
have that like comfort. I usually breastfed on the couch because it was so
okay.
comfortable.
Yeah.
But that chair, I was just like, no. But my mother-in-law was like, no, you can't get rid of that.
Really?
Like this is
She remembered,
This
like-
is the chair.
Oh.
And so we kept it, and she wants it. But there is,
Oh
I
my
think
gosh.
maybe women have a little bit more
Definitely.
attachment to that, because my husband's like,
Yeah.
let it go.
Yeah, 100%. And I think, like, to be honest now, and I knew, like, my husband kept telling me this. He's like, Kim, I promise, like, you're not going to miss this stuff. You won't even remember, like, that couch or these bar stool, whatever it was.
And you don't.
And I don't really.
Yeah.
And I don't. And we get here and we got, like, our place is furnished, and we did that on purpose. And I don't, like, now this bed is my bed, and I like this bed, and like,
Same.
you know, and it's fine. Like,
Yeah.
I don't even think about it. And so I think my concept of like home has really changed, like, since we've moved here. And I am actually more comfortable being like, we've made this our home. And like, I bought little
Yeah.
touches that like made this even feel more like our home. And I'm getting comfortable with the concept that like home is really where like my husband, my kids are, and we can like make this whatever we want, like in terms of our life and our experience. And I think the trade-offs for me are like how much I feel like I've grown as a person, and watching our kids grow, like learning another language, being like such more like asking just like really interesting cultural questions, like are just so rich and amazing that the trade-offs of like not having this comfort like home, where honestly I don't even think I was like super happy, if I'm coming down and being real with myself about it, like it's going to be okay. And I think now I've like been learning to trust that like home doesn't have to be this like defined amazing place that you've like mapped out your whole life and you finally get there. It's like it can evolve, and there's probably going to be multiple homes that we'll have throughout our life, and they'll all have different stages. And I think one of the beauties of that is like I think we'll remember a lot more. Like I was realizing like when you move, often like you have these like distinct memories, like I do, of like that was like when, you know, your daughter was like a baby in Paris, and you'll like always like, have that association with like that apartment in Paris being where you raised
all those
your daughter
memories,
and all those memories like as a baby. And like I have the same with like a place in San Francisco. Like I still like, we drove by it before we left, and it was like all the places like I used to walk to the little park, and like you know, you just, there's like distinct memories I think of each place that are so strong, and it's, I think that's also really special and important. So I think
it's good to also know that like you'll still have those memories,
even if you
don't
totally
have a place.
And
because I think that can also be like you have all those memories, they're just a little different. And I don't know, I'm okay with how I'm okay with the home that
I know same here
building, and I'm excited to see how it all plays out.
It'll play out totally. I think to wrap this, I think we are encouraging, and what we're sharing is like our own experience of being open-minded on like a concept of home, but definitely something that has both crossed our minds recently. So we hope you'll tune in again, and in the meantime, cuckoo.
Bye.